pipes! Ooh, law! Yaroo! Thank you, Roundtree. Gosh, fellows, that was a frightfully close thing. Just as well I happened across this little wheeze. A paperback stuffed down the back of my breeches. But what's this? A 1968 edition of David Sherwin's If. The cloistered alcoves of boys' boarding schools have for many years provided a fertile setting for fictional drama. Traditional school yarns such as the Greyfriars Tales, which famously included such characters as Harry Wharton, or the perennial open target for sizest humour Billy Bunter, or Thomas Hughes's Tom Brown's School Days, all exploited the dramatic potential of such settings for the sake of an entertaining yarn. Yet ultimately they align their main protagonists in harmony with the spirit of their alma mater. Differences or misunderstandings between these stories' heroes and the school's higher authorities tend to be resolved. Conflicts within these tales tend to be between the more upstanding kind of pupil and the rank outsider, the bully, the cad, or the ne'er-do-well. This template held sway for more or less a century, but was flipped on its back in the post-Second World War years by the inspired lampooning of Geoffrey Willans and Ronald Searle's Molesworth quadrilogy, which kicked off with Down With School in 1953, which turned a satirical eye on the boarding school experience from the jaundiced viewpoint of one Nigel Molesworth, whose incisive observations hilariously exposed the institutional conceits, the mediocrity, the disconnect between reward and merit, and the undercurrent of sadism, all of which were endemic within such an institution. However, in 1968, Lindsay Anderson's film If pitched a fragmentation charge through the genre's creaky old doors. Conceived at the height of worldwide unrest, the white heat of countercultural fury was turned upon the public school system, the resultant film being bizarre, confrontational, shocking and enduringly resonant. Originally titled Crusaders, the script to If, this volume is a screenplay rather than a novelisation, was conceived between David Sherwin and his friend John Howlett in their late teens, based on their own harrowing experiences of school life. It took some shopping around before they found a suitable director in Lindsay Anderson, who was introduced to them by producer Seth Holt, and the script provoked some considerable hostility along the way. While the original screenplay was reworked at Anderson's suggestion, a parallel dummy script had to be concocted in order to placate the authorities at Cheltenham College, the filming location, and a provisional title for this, If, a reference to the Kipling poem. These schools were big on him, I suppose. This title somehow lodged. Credited solely to Sherwin, this volume, with the correct but incorrect ellipsis, opens with lofty extracts from big school lore, lyrics to the Stand Up for College song, and some blather concerning character-shaping service and discipline, before we're into the main flow of things, commencing with College House Return. Amid the chaos of autumn term arrivals, the haughty patrician Adonis and chief whip, for which Reed head bully Roundtree presides. The hierarchical nature of this establishment is quickly made evident, new arrivals being categorised as scum, a lower form of life who are expected to jump to the call of wankers such as Roundtree. Routine tasks such as warming the lavatory seat. They're also obliged to master the school lingo, bump, over their first 2 weeks. Among a slightly older set of boys, Johnny Knightley reminisces about his summertime exploits while awaiting the arrival of Mick Travis, who sweeps past another inquisitorial prefect with his face obscured by a hat and scarf. Upstairs in their dorm, it transpires that the unpopular Stephens has been promoted to dormitory head. Travis remains mysteriously remote from the rest of the boys, flitting off to the privacy of his study where Johnny pins him down to discover Mick decorating his study space with countercultural bric-a-brac, and that he's been consorting with birds in pubs, as well as grown a moustache over the holidays, which he's going to have to lose. We cut from here to the dining hall, where the workings of this place's hierarchy is further made plain. Mr. Kemp, the housemaster, played by Arthur Lowe in the film, along with his expressionless wife, is a remote and ineffectual sort of figure as he mechanically dispenses his formulaic start of term speech that the whips wield the real disciplinary power. There follows a parade of humiliating rituals such as medical inspection by matron, a prison-like lights-out routine which is conducted by the whips, in which it's made clear that lads of Travis and Knightley's age, or their dormmate Wallace for that matter, are not exempt from the whip's iron rule. The chapter ends on some smutty after-dark dormitory talk, to which resident astronomy nerd Peanuts concludes, "Paradise is for the blessed, not for the sex-obsessed." Having vividly established the cast of characters and the repressive nature of the establishment, the following chapters, College Once Again Assembled, Term Time, and Ritual and Romance, further expand on the school's arcane rituals, its dismal power structure, and Travis and friends' attempts to find and express themselves within such strictures. We get to meet the headmaster and various teaching staff who all seem to imagine themselves to be in some way progressive and understanding. History teacher Mr. Stewart comes over as seems a particularly outspoken sort of customer, but this comes over as almost a disingenuous conceit. It's lost within the school setup in which the whips are seen to wield a disproportionate level of power, as if the teaching staff have delegated or dodged with this particular responsibility to the extent that the whips have almost become jailers to the staff also. The chaplain is perhaps an exception to this, apparently being fond of dishing out physical blows on the younger boys, and whose behaviour carries distinctly Nazi undertones. Casual sadism flourishes elsewhere meanwhile, Biles being manhandled towards the lavvies by a gaggle of his contemporaries for a ritualistic head flushing, a disturbing Wallace who's using the privacy of a cubicle to practice his guitar. A history outing has Mr. Stewart relating to Travis and Co. forebodingly the futility of the Wat Tyler uprising, the fortuitousness of trying to impose a revolution on the well-fed, sensible English. In the whip's common room, meanwhile, we're privy to their lord-like dealings, and we learn that their attitude to their scum, on top of being cruel and exploitative, is downright predatory. Meanwhile, in Travis's study, dissent is quietly brewing amongst the adolescent angst, the parry match clippings, contraband vodka bottles, and the Missaluba selections on the dance set. An intrusion from prowling whip Denson results in a cold punishment shower for degenerate Travis and his companions the following morning. Having endured this tribulation, Mick and Johnny make an illicit break for the freedom of the town centre on a Saturday afternoon, where a spell of hijinks culminates in them thieving a motorbike from right under a showroom guy's nose and heading out to the transport cafe, where they encounter the girl, a mysterious tiger lady, wonderfully played by Christine Noonan, who shows the upfront Mick that she can give as good as she gets in a sequence which drifts in and out of dreamlike eroticism. Chapter 5, Discipline, is the crunch point at which the whips decide that they're going to exercise the carte blanche for physical punishment the teaching staff have so irresponsibly allowed them, to make an example of Travis and friends, particularly Travis, for no other transgression than being a nuisance. You three have become a danger to the morale of the whole house. Travis counters at first with dumb insolence before letting Rowntree know exactly what he thinks of him. The thing I hate about you, Rowntree, is the way you give Coca-Cola to your scum and your best teddy bear to Oxfam, and expect us to lick your frigid fingers for the rest of your frigid life. Anyway, there's no way back from that one, so it's down to the gym for a ceremonial caning. Knightley and Wallace each receiving 4, Travis receiving 10, the reports being audible throughout the whole school. Chapter 6, Resistance, sees our trio licking their wounds, not literally, back in Travis's study, where they're dodging a house thump, a sort of group circle jerk which is instigated by the whips over some recent sporting success. The trio, in a blood oath, pledge themselves to resistance, Mick then revealing that he's managed to pocket a handful of live rifle bullets from the cadet's armoury, proclaiming that one man can change the world with a bullet in the right place. As darkness descends, a peek through Peanut's telescope reveals in the distance that the girl from the cafe is staring in their direction, smiling, as if in spiritual allegiance. The next chapter, Fourth to War, sees the absurd pomp and circumstance of the cadets' field day, a ridiculous exercise in wargaming headed up by the chaplain, whose swaggering pomposity is deflated at the culmination of the exercise, at which point our trio cut loose with their live ammo, causing panic rather than physical harm, and then threatening to bayonet the cowering CO. This transgression bypasses any whip discipline and lands them directly in front of the head, where they're ordered to formally apologise to the Reverend. Bizarrely, he's installed in one of the headmaster's drawers, before the head decides to show his understanding side, and that he's not going to deal out punishment in the usual way. He's going to give the boys a privilege. Work, real work, is not a punishment, it's an opportunity to serve. Well, most of us will know where that leads. As I said before, these delusions of progressiveness on the head's part come over as foolishly fanciful, given that the staff have surrendered their own responsibilities on discipline to the sadistic hands of a cadre of sanctioned bullies. And if you don't know the ending, hint on the back cover, the climax is shocking, bleakly comical and deeply provocative. When I picked this up and realised that it was a screenplay treatment rather than a novelisation, I was a bit hesitant, but in reality it's no chore at all to get through. Sherwin's treatment is immediately involving, and for all the shock value, the casual sadism, there's a poetic, dreamlike sort of undercurrent to Eve that draws you through the narrative to its admittedly highly controversial conclusion. On which you maybe have to bear in mind that the course of the story does seem to weave between reality and fantasy, but I suspect many of us will at least have idly fantasised about something like this, whether at the school you went to or some other workplace you've been in. I'm not aware of any directly connected copycat incidents, so possibly you could read this as a useful lightning rod for these type of frustrations. Malcolm McDowell's Travis has since become a significant anti-hero to many who have experienced this kind of alienation in this type of educational system. Ironically, it seems to have been the nudity which caused the BBFC the most consternation. Now, it would be lovely to be able to write this off as a quaint period piece from an embattled age, but the core themes remain problematically relevant. The head's assertion to the Crusaders that those who are given the most also have the most to give seems bitterly ironic still, and the elevation of emotionally stunted bullies from an arcane all-male enclave to ill-deserved positions of authority does ring a bell, doesn't it? It formed the first part of a loose trilogy which retained the central character of Mick Travis in his continued adventures, and the films used many of the same actors, including Arthur Lowe and Robin Asquith, but it's arguable how much continuity there was between Iv and Oh Lucky Man and Britannia Hospital. A rumoured proper sequel to Iv never saw the light of day. The screenplay allows some insight into the filmmaker's intentions and various details that might either have been easily missed or that didn't make the cut. Interestingly, Rowntree's career intention is to become a trainee interviewer for the BBC. I'd have guessed Sandhurst and the City, and the general that we meet on speech day, he's the father of one of the whips, Denson. Like the film, the book retains a crackling rebellious power. The fire of resistance, whether it's doomed or not, burns fiercely within these pages. Anyway, that's quite enough of this degeneracy. I'm confiscating this until the end of term. Lights out in 30 seconds.
Downside windows and skylights open tonight.